Welcome. Thank you for joining our Enterprise Content Management Best Practice Series webinar. I'm Becky Melody, your hostess for today's presentation. Our featured speaker is Daniel O'Connor, Chief Executive Officer of Innovo Commerce. The discussion today will cover introductions, USDM at a glance, webinar logistics, and our discussion topic, external collaboration with SharePoint in life sciences industry. We're proud to have Daniel presenting with us today as he brings extensive Microsoft-based software design, development, and commercialization expertise to his customer engagements. He has worked closely with SharePoint since 2003. Innovo Commerce is a leading provider of SharePoint solutions for both content management and clinical portals. The applications developed by Innovo Commerce are used by over 50% of the world's largest pharma companies in the clinical environment. Innovo Commerce is the developer of InnovoPoint, the world's leading clinical and investigator portal product. Built on the SharePoint platform, the product has been selected by several major pharmaceutical companies. US Data Management is focused exclusively on the life science domain. We're the market leader in providing IT, quality, and regulatory compliance professional service solutions to the regulated industry. We're headquartered in Ventura, California, and we're a compliance partner for many best-of-breed vendors, including Oracle and SAP. We've delivered more than 1,000 successful projects with over 130 life science clients, and we're the preferred compliance partner for all sizes, small, mid-tier, and large life science companies. Our various dedicated practices include IT and virtualization, quality and auditing, enterprise content management, enterprise resource planning, product lifecycle management, enterprise quality management, manufacturing automation and equipment, clinical and drug safety, nutraceuticals, business intelligence, project management, governance, risk, and compliance, and of course our laboratory practice, which includes both systems and equipment. We offer hands-on experience assisting clients under regulatory distress, and we're the market leader for validation accelerator packs. Our overall directive is to simplify, unify, and optimize compliance and business objectives. The content will be covered in approximately 30 minutes, and then you can interact with our team via the iLink message board, which you'll see on the lower left of your screen. This session is being recorded and will be posted on the USDM website. We're hoping to share ideas, facilitate discussion, and then explore solutions together. Thank you for taking the time to join us today, and with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Daniel.
Thank you very much, Becky, and it's an honor to be here with US Data Management to discuss externalization in the life sciences industry utilizing SharePoint technologies. I'm going to provide a brief introduction to Innovo Commerce and then touch on some of the externalization drivers that we see out in the marketplace, some examples that we see in the clinical and commercialization arenas, some deployment, portal deployment best practices that we've learned over the last few years, and of course field questions and answers, and we hope that this will provide some value in the next half hour. So again, Innovo Commerce has been introduced in the beginning, and I want to talk to the life science externalization drivers. So what is externalization, and what is the impact of it in the industry? So starting with externalization, what we've observed and this is a process that's been going on for some years now, but we see it accelerating. First, I want to touch on a couple concepts. Externalization includes the strategies, processes, and systems required to deal with an industry moving towards vertical disintegration. This is important. Vertical disintegration is when companies start to outsource or farm out key activities in their value chain, maintaining core activities internally and outsourcing and partnering increasingly. Many industries have already undergone this transformation, including the automobile industry, motion picture industry, aerospace, IT industries. It's ongoing. Now we're seeing that in life sciences, which we're covering as including this biotechnology, pharmaceutical, diagnostics, device, and other related industries are undergoing the same transformation. So what is vertical integration and vertical disintegration? Vertical integration is the process of performing all R&D, manufacturing, and commercialization in a particular company. So you can think of an automobile company in the 1920s through the 50s as a great example of that, where everything is done in-house. But come the 60s, 70s, you start to see that vertical disintegration, where suppliers, all that is outsourced. So vertical disintegration, again, is the move towards performing many or most of these processes in other companies. And that has significant implication in today's global connected world via the internet. So some life sciences examples, increasing programmatic outsourcing of clinical trials to CROs based on therapeutic expertise, specific domain expertise, e.g. data management, geographical presence, and other factors. There's an increasing reliance on third parties for IT in the drug development world, for example. So universities, government-backed research, niche biopharmas, etc. So larger sponsors are going to have to open up and collaborate in new, more open, flexible ways moving forward to secure new intellectual property. So what does this look like in a very simplified diagram? The life science value chain areas of externalization. So we have research and development, clinical, manufacturing, commercialization, and areas where increasingly you'll see extensive partnering and alliances involving the externalization process. So in basic research and discovery, you'll see universities, nonprofits, government alliances, other alliances with other life sciences companies. In clinical, CROs, development partnerships, manufacturing, contract manufacturing organizations. And in commercialization, we'll see contract sales, commercial alliances that will be evolving as companies look to be more flexible in how they commercialize. Now, some core activities that typically will not be externalized are core operations, legal, marketing, some program management, and executive management. So what are some of the drivers that we see? Particularly with pharmaceuticals, we see that generally the pharma healthcare market, we see increasing global competition. So both with generic companies and just with other companies in other countries that are vying for the same markets. We see increasing pricing pressure from payers, whether it's government payers or private payers, depending on the country. There's generally going to be a downward pressure on drug pricing, which means that the companies are going to have to be more efficient, which means that they're going to probably outsource more components. Expiring patents and the move toward generics, I already touched on that. Changing models, so we're seeing sort of a steady move from the blockbuster model to a more targeted therapy model. Generally downsizing, so companies are preparing for this. They've been over the last several years, starting particularly around probably 2007, 2008, layoffs, and we don't think that there's going to be massive hiring back. I think we're going to see the use of partnerships, contractors to augment labor. This as well as compliance and data quality. There's an increasing scrutiny on various information chains and the need to have better processes and technologies to deal with this global disparate value chain. General pharma sponsor drivers, increasingly complex global trials is a great example with programmatic outsourcing to partners. Again, the externalization driver. Siloed applications coupled with potentially antiquated business processes. So as companies need to be more flexible, they'll work with outside parties, groups to help augment internal challenges, and lack of data and information transparency and intense global competition for investigator sites. So again, need for getting CRO partners. That's an example. We see, excuse me, as far as our experience with building clinical portals that help facilitate clinical portal product that helps facilitate externalization in the clinical world. And again, we work with US Data Management as a service provider to enable this type of technology in large companies. So US Data Management can attest to some of these challenges as well, or these needs. General customer-specific needs. One, there's a drive for efficiency. So as they externalize, as they work with more partners, they want portal technology to drive efficiency with one secure location for example, an investigator trial file to help their different investigators. They want there's a drive to centralize, program, and study information in one secure repository. As collaborations and externalization gets more involved, there's many more documents flying around, and there's a need to control those versions of documents and study status updates. Limit use of email attachments as a collaboration mechanism. There's a need for one-stop for training, as increasingly, again, externalization means that companies aren't necessarily hiring more people to do training, so you need technology to help you do that. And more scalable communication with technology supporting that, simplifying administrative tasks for partners, ensuring audit capability for compliance, and generally accelerate processes like study startup. Another example is in the commercialization arena, where increasingly, as we move to this externalization phase, pharma companies collaborate with multiple parties to secure intellectual property, to develop compounds to ultimately, solve therapeutic challenges and keep the pharmaceutical business going. So generally, we see this happening where there's a need for increasing amounts of partnership. Specialization of healthcare biopharma therapies, move more towards niche targeted therapies and personalized medicine. There's a ever more complex ecosystem of intellectual property generation, where you have, again, government-backed research, universities, smaller, more niche biotech companies. All this means that there's going to need to be, with this externalization and commercialization, technology that helps facilitate an ever-changing set of partnerships that are working on various projects. A little more specific in commercialization, as business development or corporate development and medical groups seek to negotiate and secure IP rights, there'll be a need for, in this case, we're talking about Microsoft SharePoint, externalization portals to help with due diligence processes, ensure that the security and role-based security is in place. Centralized web repository for commercial transactions when different pharmaceutical, biotech, or device companies are negotiating for the rights to particular compounds or products. Scalable, repeatable infrastructure to facilitate ongoing transactions, and flexible, externalized collaborative capabilities with compliance and security enforcement. Again, lots of proprietary confidential information. There's a need to go to web-based solutions to interact, and the security needs to be in place for intellectual property protection and potentially privacy as well. So I want to talk about a couple of case examples we've seen out there. These are just from some customers. So in this case, it's a clinical portal. It's where, again, the externalization is happening with CROs and directly with sites, investigator sites, and there's a need for technology to help facilitate that process. And these are direct from investigator sites that partner with the sponsor pharmaceutical company. And one quote is, any time I can spend not on the phone or on administrative stuff is the time I can spend screening and visiting patients. So they need technology to help make their lives easier. Another quote, there's always something in the trial setup that is a waste of time or doesn't make sense. This is when it's manual. Today we have no influence on this, so they want to be able to have technology that helps them organize and streamline. And definitely there's too many emails out there, so there needs to be a better way. So I've touched on some of these already. What we've seen, again, a case example for externalization in life sciences in the clinical arena is the need for a clinical and investigator portal. SharePoint's a compelling technology for that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But again, what are we seeing in the clinical arena? A growing programmatic outsourcing of clinical trials. Again, a move from blockbuster to niche therapy, biologics and diagnostics. Intensifying global competition in the branded and generic area creates the need for more and more efficiency, which again goes back to that externalization theme where increasingly companies will cut back and they will use partners more frequently. This is important, introduction of commodity platforms and disruptive technologies. So SharePoint, to Microsoft's credit, is a technology that has, in a sense, to some extent commoditized the web collaboration, which is good for buyers. That means that there's a compelling technology out there that can be enhanced to facilitate business needs like external collaboration to help facilitate the externalization process. Micro trends are productivity, growing CRO and investigator, network building and optimization, and compliance. And compliance is very important. I want to stop there for a second. We work with US Data Management, who are a leader in the United States for compliance services around life science focused technology. And you think about the compliance considerations as you start to open up your systems to multiple parties across the internet. So there has to be a considerable compliance strategy in place, and U.S. Data Management are leaders in the country doing that. So it's good to work always with folks that understand compliance considerations. Key for these systems are to have a flexible and highly scalable user management because, again, you're working with multiple partners across multiple time zones, and you need to be able to manage users. Site document management, tracking, and secure document exchange. For a clinical portal, you have to have investigator trial file management and archive, training, site communications, compliance services, interfaces to internal systems, which can be a challenge. We can't go into that today. We don't have the time, but that's a topic in and of itself. When you connect the externalization systems to the internal legacy systems that you have in your company. And a compliant US EU Safe Harbor, SAS 70 data center, very important, where applications are hosted. So why is SharePoint a good strategy to drive externalization? Well, first of all, Microsoft has invested hundreds of millions of dollars into this technology and continue to drive a lot of innovation ongoing as new releases come out over the years. Additionally, the company, it's the company's fastest growing server product in history, and that's for a reason, because it's a very good product. It's a platform, so you can use it and in multiple arenas, and I'll go into that in a minute. There's pervasive adoption for team collaboration, intranet, extranet, and specialized applications. So, for example, nearly 100% of the top 20 pharma are using it now, and that may be 100% now. There's a very healthy ecosystem of SharePoint-based product vendors, system integrators, and consultancies to implement externalization solutions. So you have this pervasive platform. Everybody's used to it, which means if pharma company A is collaborating with pharma company B with a SharePoint-based application, both, more than likely, the knowledge workers that are collaborating externally are very familiar with SharePoint already, and the learning curve is much less. Even if there's different products built on SharePoint, if it's a SharePoint-based app, the same look and feel, the navigation typically is similar, and the underlying logic of the system is very similar because it's the same underlying technology. So it's very important that learning curve is less. There's a very healthy ecosystem, the providers, and market evidence. Most of the leading pharmaceutical companies are planning to or are already in the process of adopting SharePoint-based clinical and investigator portals, for example. So we work with multiple large companies, and what we're seeing is that the big, at least in the pharmaceutical space, are looking at SharePoint, and the device space as well. Again, I touched on the Microsoft investments. Important is that it is the world's leading collaboration platform, and there are large investments and tight integration to the Microsoft productivity platform, which is what nearly just all knowledge workers use. Office, Outlook is pervasive everywhere in every large organization. And SharePoint integrates tightly with those internal systems, which makes for even internal productivity while you're externalizing your capabilities to partners. And moreover, many companies already own SharePoint licenses that they can utilize for externalization enhancements. So whether your internal IT department works with internal expertise or consultancies or integrators or product vendors, you know, there's a lot in favor of going towards SharePoint. Finally, it's a compelling platform to build on. You have not only collaboration, intranet, and extranet, what we essentially use for these portal applications, but also document management, reporting options, and several other features that you can leverage. And again, it's designed as a development platform, so you can expand and enhance SharePoint-based applications for various purposes. Just a general depiction of some of the capabilities of SharePoint, and we're referring to SharePoint 2010, which is the latest version that's been out for a couple years now. SharePoint Extranet, this is just an example of what an extranet looks like from an IT perspective. Again, there's multiple ways to set up extranets for partner collaborations, again, which is part of the tools or systems that you can use for your externalization of your company. Here's an example, and this is a little more complex for a SharePoint virtual farm, an enterprise farm that we use for our portal product. This is a farm that will scale to 20,000+ users, and there's templates to do this so that when you set up extranets for various activities, you can work with Microsoft, and they have multiple partners that can advise you as to how to do this. Companies like US Data Management are experts in looking at these systems and making sure that they're qualified and that they're validated, and that you can use them for any validated activities. Just a depiction, technology depiction of how we see externalization, SharePoint-based externalization in life sciences unfolding. There's areas like discovery, research portals, clinical portals, manufacturing portals, commercial portals. These are general terms. Our clinical portal investigator portal would fit obviously in the clinical portal box, and there's other companies that also build these things. Integration with other systems, and the idea here is that there's a lot you can do with this Microsoft technology. Moving right along, as we have not a lot of time here, just some general best practices that we've seen, you know, with our own deployments, working with US Data Management in this area. So if we look at externalization in clinical and a clinical portal, investigator portal example, typically in preparation you want to identify processes that you're going to modify to ensure that you are as efficient as possible and agile as possible and secure as possible, collaborating with external parties, whether they're CROs, investigators, IRBs. You finalize those requirements. You make sure that they map to what a vendor can provide, and you involve stakeholders on the right-hand side there from clinical operations, ISIT, compliance. In deployment, you typically may want to take a phased approach. Don't try to do it all at once. Identify some critical phases and work towards getting each phase right, rather than trying to do everything in one full swoop is our recommendation. This is just an example of one phased approach. Set up a basic portal product first for your communications and training and basic document exchange for your collaboration with your CROs and sites. Then enable, for example, perhaps safety document distribution, and then perhaps in another phase, full clinical system integration with single sign-on to underlying systems. So we highly recommend that you really take some time to understand how you work, how you're going to need to work now and in the future as you externalize more of your activities with partners, and understand the requirements, and then start applying it to the technology options that are out there. And again, there's different, we're a product, IC is a product vendor, but there's other product vendors. The technology is important. The most important thing, we think, is the leadership, to understand that companies have to start moving in this direction, the prioritization which comes with leadership, the process understanding, and companies like US Data Management can really help with that, and including the compliance implications for new processes that are externalized, the requirements, and then the system. Again, SharePoint's a great platform for that, and I think that you learn SharePoint, study the features and how you can externalize it, and apply that as you're developing your processes and requirements. And with that, that's a lot to cover in a short period of time, but with that, I'd like to hand it back to Becky for questions. I want to thank everybody for attending, and I hope this was helpful. And please feel free to ask as many questions as you need to.
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate that, and thanks for sharing such great information there. Yes, at this time, we do invite you to ask your questions via the public chat at the bottom left of your screen. While we're waiting for those questions to come in, I would remind you that the session is being recorded and will be available at usdatamanagement.com. Take a moment there and look at our site. You can see previously posted sessions and our upcoming venue as well. Okay, very good. Looks like our first question is from Ralph. He's asking, what externalization apps are most common in the life science industry based on your experience?
Okay. That's a good question. I would say, again, we're really focused on products in clinical. So the clinical and investigator portal product that we have built, we obviously do a lot of work in that area. So I would say that is an area that I see the most activity. That's not to say there aren't other arenas where you see portals, externalization portals popping up on SharePoint. You see it in commercialization. You see it in discovery research, basic research. But I would say that based on my subjective experience, I'm seeing a lot of activity in clinical. But again, I'm subjective in that sense, in the sense that that's the area I focus in.
Very good. Thank you, Daniel. Next question is from Mark. What is the key trend you are seeing with SharePoint-based externalization apps?
I think a trend that we're going to see, and I think Microsoft's going to support this, is an increasing move towards social interaction and enabling social networking types of capability in the SharePoint platform, as well as mobile smartphone interfacing. And I think that's going to be in a very exciting area. I think that in the next few years, increasingly, less and less people are going to be on laptops and desktops, and more of them are going to be carrying their computing power around in their smartphone. And I think we're going to see more and more of that in the next few years. And I think we need to start preparing for that now. In areas like clinical, we see where our products used in multiple countries, clinical investigators often have smartphones and tablets. And we're going to see more and more of that. And we need to prepare for that to help facilitate these collaborations more effectively.
Thank you, Daniel. Very good. We have other notes coming in. We appreciate you posting the notes of thanks and compliments to our presenter, Daniel. Thank you for that. Questions again about the presentation. Both the slides and the audio will be included in the posting on our website. So I believe that answers the several questions there around that. And I think with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Any additional questions that come after the fact, feel free to send them over to me at rmelody@usdatamanagement.com, and I can then forward them and collaborate with Daniel to get answers directly for you. And looks like we have other thank yous coming in. Thank you for that. Also would like to remind you that we'd like you to join the discussion forum on LinkedIn. We welcome your insight and feedback there. We'd also appreciate any suggestions that you have on future topics. If you appreciated this webinar, let us know by clicking the like button on the USDM LinkedIn group page, or even better, post a comment there. We'd love to see that. One line, it takes just a moment, but would mean quite a bit to us. In 2012, this is a very important indicator that our management team is looking at and using as a basis to continue to fund our complimentary series. So take a moment, say hi to us there, and let us know what your thoughts are. Thank you, Daniel, again, and thanks to the Innovo Commerce team for presenting with USDM today, and thanks to our participants for taking the time to join us. We do appreciate the opportunity to team with you all in working towards excellence in compliance. Thanks again. Have a wonderful day.